I think it's on my end, obviously, so
It's always on your end.
whatever.
That's what she said.
Yeah, it is.
Mark
It is what
Hansen.
she said. Ironically, that's what she said. Trying to think of if there's been anything kind of.
Are you there?
I am here. I wonder. You know what? I wonder if there's a setting on. The thing is like, cause I was using these headphones earlier, like I plug them into my guitar and everything, and it
you
sounds
trashed
just
it with
fine.
your brutal guitar playing. That's why.
No, like guitar
Those
playing.
are normal headphones for missionaries. They can't withstand that metal assault that you're giving it every day.
No, because I told you, dude, I tend to play more R&B, but with a metal guitar tone. So I don't know what that means, but I'm just wondering if there's like a setting on Skype.
That sounds a little better, actually, strangely enough.
I know, because I'm like in some sort of like little alcove. Okay, I'll sit here.
Well, there you go. Are there pigeons and stuff shitting on you there or anything? Or
Probably.
oh man, that's what I was hoping for.
You still sound distorted, but I can understand you. So
that's got to be you then, because
yeah, I know it's definitely me. It's just weird because I played a song, like I just pulled up a song on YouTube, and the song, like the music sounds all right, which is why I'm thinking I wonder if there's a setting on this on fucking Skype that
now you sound distorted.
is causing it.
Are you there?
Hold on a sec.
Now you sound okay.
Hold on.
I heard feedback too. I just heard what I said like 2 seconds after. Everything I say, I'm hearing like a second later delay.
How's that?
Mary had a little lamb. She took it to the store. She traded it in and got Cannibal Corpse CDs because she preferred gore.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That's better. Yeah, I don't hear anything now. Okay, right. Well, there you go. It's Mentally Challenged with Marc, technologically retarded Hansen, and then J.R. Torina, the Master Butcher here. What were we going to talk about this week, Marcus?
That's what I was trying to figure out. Like, I really need to finish those books. Like because I don't know. I thought it's funny because like I totally just I read the David Vincent book in one day, just like gobbled it up. I thought I had momentum. I do love him. And I thought I had momentum to carry me into the I Am Morbid, or Are You Morbid, by Thomas J. Warrior.
Tom G. Warrior.
I'm about, yeah, that's what I said.
You keep saying J. I don't know where you're getting that J. Is it because of me, JR?
No, I think it's because like there's ooh, what was that?
That was a Tom Warrior.
Oh, okay. All I heard was like static, because like I said, you're a little distorted.
That's how I appear to my intended victims, is distorted. You don't hear me until the end when I lull you into the other side. Drink your life force.
There's a comedy podcast I listen to called Legion of Skanks.
You don't say.
And yeah, and there's one of the comedians is named Luis J. Gomez. He's like Puerto Rican.
And that's where you're getting the J?
Probably. I think anytime there's like a J or a G, I just transpose a J on top of it. So, but I got like I said, I'm about 60, 70 pages into the Thomas G. Warrior book. So it's kind of, you know, so, but I mean, we could talk up until that point. I mean, he starts by talking about how, like, just kind of the struggles of recording, is it Pandemonium?
To the Pandemonium?
Yeah. Like, because that's kind of like their landmark CD, right? And it was Roadrunner, wasn't it? That was releasing it.
No, Noise Records.
Noise Records, right. And he was, dude, like 90% of the time he's bitching about the label. But I could, so it's like one of those things we could talk about, like label versus artist, and how much involvement and support should a record label give to, because I understand like where he's coming from, where it's like the label just does not understand the vision, right, of the artist. And that's what
that
it sounds
happens
like.
a lot. Well, yeah, I mean, Noise Records was really a German. It's hard to say. They were. This is again where the split between USA and Europe comes in, is because Noise Records, to me, was always known as a thrash label. They're the ones who brought us tons of bands like Kreator. They had some. I think Voivod was on there for a while. Celtic Frost. All the other Coroner was on there.
Mm-hmm.
Tons of thrash bands, but if you look at their entire complete catalog, there's actually a lot of bands that you and Dustin, your friend from Category 5, enjoy, like Rage.
Yeah.
Watchtower, I think, maybe had a record out. There were a couple other, like...
Yeah, the first Watchtower, well, not the first Watchtower album, but their Control and Resistance was done on Noise, I believe.
There was a lot of power metal, too, which is weird that he would be so anti Into the Pandemonium, but Into the Pandemonium, of course, wasn't power metal, but it wasn't something I think a metal fan couldn't get into, but he acted like it was the worst thing he'd ever heard, and he like stripped the songs down on Into the Pandemonium to just the basic metal sounding songs and got rid of the girls singing with the French horns and or with the violins, and got rid of like some of the symphonic stuff and like the Frank Sinatra cover, and pared it down. It was,
well, the thing with so kind of like some of the reason why I kind of like I understand where Noise is coming from, because one, look, they're dealing with fucking kids, you know what I mean? Like, it's these 18, 19-year-old who have, who almost have like they're almost delusional in what they want to accomplish. And I don't think they had an idea. And I think that's where the labels are in a tricky spot, because they have no idea what's going to hit or not, I think the problem with labels is they think they know what's going to hit, right?
Well, I mean, here's the funny part, though, is, of course, Noise Records released Cold Lake, the one that followed this record, which was complete 180 from what Celtic Frost had ever done. Like, they were the kings of dark metal thrash, the proto black metal stuff. Then they're coming out with a glam record, or a sleazy glam rock record, where they're wearing acid wash jeans and pink lipstick. Now, to me, that would be the album that I would squash and say, "Fuck, no, you're not putting this out." So, what the fuck there? I mean, Noise Records got bought out, but I don't think it was around there. I think he was still there for quite a while into the '90s. So,
well, and you know what, I listened to Cold Lake recently, and I gotta admit, it's even as a glam record, it's not very good. Like, his voice is not.
Oh, really?
It doesn't. His voice doesn't work for that kind of music. He
that's
actually.
what I mean.
He's not a melodic singer.
It's like a big brutal guy trying to be like a sissy. It's just, that's the same vibe I got from Typo Negative. For me anyway, because I listened to Carnivore when Peter Steele came out with that band. Then all of a sudden he's like, "Well, give her. Well, she knows not what she does." I'm like, "What? Okay, what the fuck is this, Peter? Like, you're a goth, preening goth guy now, like this 6'7" muscular dude, like he's like hanging out at goth clubs on the couch in the back where only the regulars sit. Like, what the fuck?"
The least wimpy goth, though, you gotta admit.
Well, maybe I've heard that they were a parody of that, but I'm like, why would they even care? Like, why would you devote your whole band to that? I mean, but it seems to me like they were just totally relishing it. But at any rate, Cold Lake is the one that should have been squashed, and that's what I've been telling you all this time. Is like they were the gods of black metal, like the proto black metal and thrash, and they were so avant-garde, so unique, and then they like turn it another corner and do Into the Pandemonium, which is like the symphonic dark Baroque record, which was fantastic. I loved it when I got it. It got a lot of shit in the press because it was so different and had like a breakbeat song on it and the cover of Mexican radio and a song with a girl singing over like a violin, and that was it. There was no other music, and people were just like trashing it. I'm like, fuck you guys, this is awesome. It's so dark. And that I get, but like when they turned another corner and did Cold Lake, it just didn't make any sense. It's like Gene Simmons once said about Kiss, like the reason we chose the black and white face paint and the studs and leather instead of the New York Dolls look, which is kind of what inspired us, is because we were big 6'5" guys, a couple 100-pound guys, and we looked ridiculous wearing tutus. So,
right.
Yeah, there you go. Tom Warrior, by that definition, looked ridiculous as well. Plus, let's face it, he's not the most handsome, like pretty-looking guy that lends himself to the glam rock look, like unlike Poison, say. And vocally, it just doesn't work. When I think of Tom Warrior, I think of subjects of pain,
right?
Lovers of death, like Dawn of Megiddo from, the Megatherion album, and not like, oh my God, cherry orchards. And I've said before that like where I tried to like meet you halfway, that like Cherry or like the Cold Lake, it's heavy for a glam record, so maybe in that way it's not so bad, but it's Celtic Frost doing it. That's awful.
Right. And I think that's the problem is it sounds too much like Celtic Frost. Like if he wanted to do that, like if he wanted to put out a glam rock record, he would have had to not sing. Like he would have had to get a new singer and probably change the name of the band.
Well, yeah, that's what I said. He should have, if he wanted to do that, just to let loose after the stress and strain of recording Into the Pandemonium, because they had a lot of shit with the people in the studios too, like, obfuscating their vision, and like, no, don't do that, do this. Let's tone this down, do that. Let's not do all that. Like, no, I want to do all that. And so he had a lot of that to deal with, but. So he got so stressed out, he just had to do Cold Lake. But I'm like, you really, and we've said this many times before, I have anyway, he should have just changed the name of the band and done another project, because he really soiled his legacy. But he came back years later with Monotheist, and it was good, an adequate apology for what he'd done in the past. But Celtic Frost is Celtic Frost. Like, nobody's ever going to meet Tom Warrior and go, you really fucked up with Cold Lake. They go, oh my God, Circle of the Tyrants, I love you, you're so awesome.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, so and on that note, I don't think people should have been so quick to write him off after that. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't think anyone wrote them off per se. Like I will always listen to Frost, but I never did buy that record, Cold Lake, after standing transfixed in place for 45 minutes at Sound Off Records, holding it in my hands, looking at it in disbelief. I'm like, it can't be. It just can't be. It's a joke. It's got to be. It's good. It's going to be cool if I buy it. It looks dumb, but it'll sound good. I'm like, no, it can't. It can't possibly. So
it can. Yeah.
So that's now that you've read the book, at least up to a point, like, do you get what I was talking about, like his legacy and what he means to people? I mean, he didn't quite get it yet in there.
Yeah,
he's like very humble in that book, but he like goes on about the stress of recording and all of that, and why.
Yeah, but like I said, it sounded like a lot of it was honestly like I don't think it was necessarily the record label's fault for giving them a hard time. I mean,
well, it wasn't just the label. He put a lot of crap onto like just the bandmates, like what they were recording, their vision, as well as like especially like the studio and the producers and stuff. That, like I said, they were giving him a lot of flack, and then the press didn't love that record. It was his big grand vision, and really to this day, like when you see people talk about Frost, there's very rare that anybody will stand up and say like, oh, I like Into the Pandemonium. There have been like 2 or 3 Celtic Frost tribute records that came out in the 90s when tribute records were the big thing. Like everybody would do those. It was just a launch pad for shitty bands that had no talent, but there was never anybody who remade anything from that album. I remember Grave did one song from that record on one of those comp records, and that was it. Everybody else, of course, was doing Circle of the Tyrants, Procreation of the Wicked, all that Morbid Tales, all that stuff. So,
that that's kind of interesting. Like if I had, how we talk about like, oh, if we had a certain amount of money, I think it would be interesting to take like, to do a tribute to Cold Lake and like re-record those songs with like a band that knows that style of music, like an LA Guns or Shotgun Messiah or something like that. Like, how would it sound? How would these songs sound if a proper glam metal band did them?
Proper glam metal band.
Yes.
Oh man. Well, here's the thing: is I don't think many actual glam bands would find that music really enticing. I guess for the sake of the project you're proposing here, maybe they would. But on the other hand,
just to kind of see how it would sound if he was able to really do it true to form. Because like I said, I think what the problem is it sounds too much like Celtic Frost with just like a glam sort of veneer. You know what I mean? But the brutal, the kind of raw, ugly Celtic Frost is still there on that album. That's kind of why I kind of gave it that. I was like, well, dude, it's still a Celtic Frost album. At the end of the day, it sounds like Celtic Frost to me. You know
what's funny about that too is Tom, as he described in that book that you're reading, he lost his identity for a while, like with the advent of Cold Lake. But if I have got some live VHS tapes of them playing old Celtic Frost songs, but with that incarnation of Frost, the Cold Lake Frost, and he's singing, his vocals are more like the Cherry Orchards, like he's singing like their brutal stuff, like that. I'm like, no, what are you doing, man? Like, if you're gonna sing your new shit like that, then whatever. Not that I love it, but you don't ruin the old classics by doing that. And that's why I think he totally lost his train of thought, his footing there. It did become an identity crisis for him, and he goes into depth about that in the book, which you're about to read, because then it gets into Cold Lake and all of that. And how that was just weird. And the guys in that incarnation of the band were more about just getting laid and partying, whereas the previous incarnation were like just all together a unit, a cohesive unit.
Sure.
So then the next record, Vanity Nemesis, it still had a little bit of that style to it, but it was more of just rock, like the less of the trying to be glam and fuckboy thing. And it was a whole different lineup, except Martin Ain had returned. And one of the guitarists stayed from the Cold Lake lineup. And then I can't remember. I think it was Stephen Priestley, maybe, who was also the drummer on there, but who also was the drummer on the first Celtic Frost record, Morbid Tales. So that album, Vanity Nemesis, like you should check that one out, because I think you'd really like that one. That one's got more of like that Babylon kind of like post glam rock, like not even the Guns N' Roses thing, but it's past that. It's like not the sleaze stuff, but it's like that weird
kind of like just hard, really, really hard rock. So it kind of has the swagger of rock.
It's got that feel, but it's not. It doesn't overdo it. It's not like glammy, but it does have somewhat of a Celtic Frost vibe. Obviously, since it's two of the original members, three technically, if you count Stephen Priestley, but it's not still like Usurper and Jewel Throne and Circle of the Tyrants. But it was definitely better than Cold Lake, but still was kind of in that vein. Plus, at that time, he married that groupie Michelle that he met. And she does a lot of vocals on the record, so it's.
Is he still married to her?
No, they're over.
I'll
remember how the book ends. I haven't read Are You Morbid in like probably a decade, but I think at the end of that book he's still with her. But I'm pretty sure. But I saw somewhere by now that they're over, or maybe it is in the book. I don't remember, but he met her while he was touring for Cold Lake. So she was an American, I think, in Texas, if I'm not mistaken, like just a girl who was at the show, and he saw her and thought she was so beautiful, and they got married, and she moved to Switzerland. So Latina girl from Texas. So anyway, it's that at the time that was happening, though, it was huge. It was like a huge culture shock thing for like the metal scene, because you were like, what the hell just happened? That's like, at the time, if Bathory had come out with a country record, or God forbid, if the singer of Morbid Angel would do that, that would be crazy.
Yeah, well, for some reason, like David Vincent going outlaw country makes perfect sense to me.
Well, he did it now at a time where it's not a big deal and people can accept it. But back in the '80s, it was still
right. If he did, yeah, if he did that like right after like an Altars of Madness,
oh
yeah,
yeah, he would have crucified, literally.
Yeah, they would have
On the cross of gore.
Yeah.
He would have been lost in the maze of torment, never to find his way out. You got to think too, like in the '80s, just if you watch TV, like if you watch stand-up comedy from the '80s or like Married with Children or shows like that,
sure,
they're very not PC, or at least the way PCism is viewed now.
oh yeah, hell no.
Like take gays for example. Like I was watching Married with Children reruns for a while, and I can't remember what they didn't call them the F word, but they said some other term that kind of wouldn't be acceptable today, and they were making jokes like saying, you know,
like calling him a fairy or
that one, and I can't remember what the exact term was, but it was something that's like considered rude now, like not racist, but like bigoted, I guess. But it was, and it wasn't done hatefully, but it was, you know, it was, the show's always addressed gays, but Married with Children was always cutting edge with like that kind of stuff anyways. But
yeah,
you look at it then, like now, back then, and you're like, that was just the norm of how people thought of it. And then like stand-up comics would always stand up and make fun of gays, and like there was an Eddie Murphy bit Saturday Night Live back when Eddie Murphy was on SNL back in like '84 or something. And he did this bit about the Michael Jackson doll and the Ken doll, and it went off about all this gay stuff and like gay, like it was fucking hilarious because it was Eddie Murphy. But that thing, you'll never see that again. I can't even find it on YouTube because it's probably so offensive now. But it's just that time. So if you think about what Celtic Frost did at that time, they went from black and spikes to pink and acid wash and poofy hair. It was insane. But now, of course, you know, everybody's like
still, dude, but still, it was like, all that aside, dude, it was a ballsy move on his part to do that.
I don't know if it was ballsy so much as it was misguided.
Really?
I think so. I mean,
maybe, yeah, maybe he just didn't read the wasn't really reading the
look at it this way, like maybe it's better he did that than went off the deep end with drugs, because a lot of musicians who get a lot of pressure like that just end up binging on drugs and stuff, and they crash and burn and or die.
Sure, yeah.
And that all he did was do like a horrible album and ruin his legacy, but still. He actually didn't ruin his legacy. I shouldn't keep saying that, but I mean he did at the time, but he totally, his music stood the test of time, of course, and it's like generational. Like everybody gets into it that's younger, so, and they don't even know about that record, some of them. But you see that what I've been saying this whole time is like that record, like it's the redheaded stepchild, if you will. It's like they don't even acknowledge it; they hate it. And there's a recent re-release on vinyl of all of their records, including the newest one, Monotheus, from 2005 or whenever it came out, or 7 or something. And it does not include Cold Lake and Vanity Nemesis. Those two albums are not in there. So to him, they're now, you know, not their canon. You know, maybe he'll re-release those separately as a 2-record box set or something with outtakes. But
yeah, or like I said, you know, I think it'd be, who knows, dude? Maybe that'll be like kind of in my back burner projects. Like maybe even I'll do it. Like if
I get to say, why don't you do it? What your band should do, like you should organize like a compilation and just get all the bands you know to.
Yeah, just to see like if we could turn them into something that, like, if it wasn't Celtic Frost, would it be a great album? You know what I mean? Like, who knows? Because once again, the recording, like the production is pretty raw on that album too. You know, like clean up the guitars, you know, get a really good singer to just nail the parts. You know, because he's not a very good singer. Let's not kid ourselves. You know, he's good at like aggressive, but he's pitchy. You know, he's not, a lot of times he falls out of key and all of that stuff. So he needs to kind of stay with the aggressive.
Are you talking about the glammy stuff or all of it?
No, glammy stuff. Like when he's singing more brutal, it works, you know, because he doesn't have to necessarily be on pitch when you're just growling and yelling. So I don't know. Like I said, it'd be interesting to see how those songs would translate under like a different, like with different musicians. You know, like if you just like pretend it wasn't Celtic Frost, how does this sound? How does it hold up with the with the same, you know, with the releases of that day, you know?
Now let me ask you this: Have you listened?
Would it sound like? Would it be as good as like Shout at the Devil or something? You know,
there probably aren't. It's not heavy metal like punchy like that. It's more of like of the time, indicative of that time, which was of course L.A. Guns and like Guns N' Roses and that more sleaze rock is how you termed it, which is more apt than just glam. It wasn't per se glam. It had that, but it was more of like that sleaze thing where
sure
it was raunchy sex lyrics, but with a weird like biblical twist. Like everything was Babylon and downtown Hanoi. Like what the fuck does all that mean, you know? And
right.
it wasn't just like, you know, like talk dirty to me or nothing but a good time or, you know, girls or
yeah.
I couldn't take that serious, you know. That's like the god of death that I've always known from Celtic Frost going, girls, hey. Let me ask you this: Have you heard Into the Pandemonium?
It's been years. Like I've listened to all the Celtic Frost albums, but like I've never really like in depth.
Because this is funny, is I'm having an in-depth conversation with a guy live on the air about the glam record of a band that I love, that I hate the record, and that's the one you've like really dissected, but you haven't heard the other stuff.
Yeah, I know.
Have you heard their older stuff though? You've heard their older stuff, right? Two Megatherion, Morbid Tales.
Yeah, but I it's been a long time, and
that stuff's not.
Yeah, they're not something I pull up, you know, a lot. But now it's kind of it get like I can listen to it almost with fresh ears, because the reason I haven't listened to a lot of Celtic Frost is I haven't known that many people that are into them.
So you know me, motherfucker.
Well, yeah, now.
As we say on the glam tour bus, it's time to pull it out, bro.
But you know how it's like when I tell you to listen to like you know, like the new Carcass. You know what I mean? Like you have, okay, so you're listening to it kind of with a little bit of my perspective on it, so you can appreciate it more. So I think if I go back and listen to Celtic Frost with sort of your sensibilities, you know, attached to it, I might be able to, you know, you kind of listen to it with fresh ears. Does that make sense?
Well, you should. They're really a great band. And Into the Pandemonium, I think if you hear the album, the actual album, the way it was intended, like say the version that's on CD, which is from A to Z, it starts with the cover of Mexican Radio. Mm-hmm. You have two versions of that breakbeat song they do, where it's just like a drum and some skittish violin in the background with samples of NASA. Those are the really standout different tracks, other than the symphonic stuff. But the symphonic stuff is really good. It merges with the metal really well. It's not overbearing like some of the newer Therion stuff. Mm-hmm. It all mixes very well, and it's just a dark, dark record. And the presentation of the graphics, like Hieronymus Bosch, Garden of Earthly Delights is the cover painting. It's a gatefold record, and on the inside, it's another painting by somebody else. It's really dark, and the whole thing is just such a dark record, like lyrically and like the sound and visually. It's a great record. Like it's stupid that people didn't like it, but I mean, they have a cover of a Frank Sinatra song on there too. But also the other thing he does on there that was different is he does this like tortured goth vocal, which I think they were listening to a lot of Fields of the Nephilim and Christian Death and bands like that, because he's got this, aside from the growl that he usually does, there's this other voice where it's like tortured vocals like this, and that's in there, and that was weird and different, but it worked for that record. And it almost sounds like a combination of those two vocals are the one you hear on Cold Lake, because he kind of doesn't know what the fuck to do.
Right. It's
like you're not a sexy man, Tom. It's not working.
Yeah, it's like half growl, half like trying to hold a melody, and like I said, it sounds very awkward to me, you know. So, but kind of on that same, like what I was thinking. So Into the Pandemonium, like, was it instantly loved by the fans, or is it one of those albums that the appreciation happened like kind of a long ways?
Well, like I said, it was just like when Mayhem released the Grand Declaration of War. That was a record. It was the one after Euronymous had died, so it had that distinction, which everybody was going to turn on it naturally, like old school fans. And it also had some industrial songs, like one or two, actually one really, and there was just different song arrangements. It wasn't just straight raging black metal. And it was after the death of Euronymous, and everybody was pissed off that he was murdered, and they hated Burzum because he'd killed him, and all this stuff. And then that was the album they gave us, and I liked it. It was a good album. It had mostly fast, really, really produced black metal on it. But there was like a slow, doomy metal song on there. There was another song where the drums were like, you know, dun, 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 like a military kind of thing, and like the singer came on and talked over it, you know, and it was just really different stuff. And they had one electronic song with electronic vocals and like electronic drums. And Euronymous liked electronic music. That's the thing people kind of forget, is he liked Kraftwerk and Skinny Puppy, things like that I know of. It shouldn't have like seeped into Mayhem very much, but that album got a lot of shit like instantly, but like gradually over time, everybody like kind of, oh yeah, I really love that record. But the same with Into the Pandemonium is like, I remember reading reviews everywhere, and like most of the metal mags, like Metal Edge, Metal Maniacs, most of them gave it like a mediocre review, like, oh, it's a little too avant-garde, or like some of the stuff is cool, but like there's some of it that's like an overdose, you know, like the girl. There's probably one or two that I recall like gave it a good review because it was so different and unique, and they were trying. But
yeah,
fan wise, I can't remember because it was one of those bands that not everybody liked. That's the thing. They were my band. Like even the thrash dudes that I hung out with in high school at that time, like they like Celtic Frost too, but I don't think they liked that one, or they weren't as into Frost as they were like. Here in Utah, people were more into like the punk and the crossover because Utah's always been more like a punk place. So anything that's like against the establishment, that was their thing. But me, I was always Celtic Frost and Bathory all the way.
Because death metal and black metal, you know, like extreme metal is pretty anti-establishment, or should be.
Well, thrash was, but that's the thing is in the 80s, thrash it started out as like the dark evil stuff, like Celtic Frost, Bathory, Possessed, first album, Dark Angel. Then as we got into 1988, you notice all the bands started doing this trend where they were like dropping the evil stuff and singing about like just socio-political stuff. And it was always they and them, meaning the government or just people who don't think like us. Like they do
the system.
That. Yeah,
they kind of started like almost taking on like the skate look, you know, like shorts.
Yeah, exactly. The skater thing. Everybody was into skating. It was all about skateboarding. It's fast speed metal. It wasn't even about heavy thrash anymore. And that's what I've talked about before is bands like Kreator like just lost me after a while because and that's probably where you picked up on them is they started doing more stripped down just guitar, like fast stuff, lots of solos, and just like pretty antiseptic lyrics about just establishment.
Yeah, although Kreator, it seems like their last few albums they kind of started going back to like evil lyrics and stuff. I don't know if you listen to some of the recent Kreator, but
I haven't. Like I said before, I think I've heard that one song on Pandora. It sounded pretty good. Like they're kind of going back to that a little bit. So I'd have to check it out. But they've done the other stuff for so many years. Like I remember they did a really terrible album called Renewal that was like this industrial kind of attempt at doing something that.
There was like that weird time for thrash in the 90s, late 90s. Because, you know, grunge basically fucked with everybody. Every scene, you know, like it completely destroyed like hair metal, grunge did, but then it left like the thrash metal bands sort of like on this weird limbo, and that's when he had like those Anthrax albums with Jon Bush, and
it was more of like a kind of a
more
rock.
like, yeah, it was almost like more like hard rock kind of. They lost like the thrash element, you know. It was like we're just a heavy rock band. And I got to admit, like, I mean, people love the Jon Bush stuff, but I was listening to it recently, and I'm like, man, this is very kind of dull.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of that era, except for, like I've said before, at that time they did the soundtrack to the John Carpenter movie Ghosts of Mars, and that record, there's no vocals on it, of course, but not to blame John Bush for anything, but I mean it's that record, like conceptually, is just like this hard, heavy thrash, heavy metal record all the way through, no vocals, and it's fucking good. And but like I said, Buckethead plays on it, and John Carpenter plays on it. And a guy named Bucket Baker, who is like more of like a jazz musician, or not jazz, but blues musician, or I don't know who Bucket Baker is, but I know it's somebody of old establishment. But, and I think I sent you that in Dropbox. I cleared out the Dropbox, but if you didn't listen to it, I'll resend it because that's a really, really good album. You'd like that one for sure. It's just straight up.
I'm sure it's on. I'm sure it's on YouTube. I could stream it.
Well, you know, it's, at that time, you did have a lot of that, and like, is it raining, or what's that wisping noise in the background?
Oh, probably. It's just the wind.
Are you against the wind, like Bob Seger?
I'm pissing in the wind.
Like the Cowboys ride against the wind.
Didn't we talk about how bad we hated Bob Seger? Can we at least agree on that?
I don't hate Bob Seger. I like some of his stuff. I mean, I grew up listening to that on the radio.
Oh, fuck that, dude. I hate Bob
Seger. It depends on what Bob Seger we're talking. Like old-time rock and roll, I don't like that. And it's really country-ish stuff I don't like. But like Hollywood Nights, I remember that because... or like Her Strut, that's a good song. Oh, I love to see her strut.
Yeah, man. Bob Seger, there's nothing redeeming about him.
There's a handful of songs. That's about it. Turn the Page, that's always been... I remember hearing that stuff.
I hate that song, and I hated that Metallica covered it.
Well, I know everybody hates it now because of Metallica, but I mean, it's still like a reputable rock song. I mean, I don't have a problem with Bob, like some of the stuff anyway, but it's like Foreigner. Like, I never loved Foreigner, but they got one or two good songs, and Bad Company has one or two good songs, but they have mostly stupid poppy bullshit.
No, I credit the song Jukebox Hero as part of my getting into metal because it was the first time I heard sort of like chugging guitars.
Well, see, I hate that song Jukebox Hero, and Lou Graham's vocals. He just sounds like a chubby guy trying to be tough. You know, that's what I hear. Like,
but it's the breakdown before the solo.
Oh, they have a breakdown like Jukebox Hero.
You know, right before the solo, and that was the first time I heard the chug of, which is metal, you know what I mean? And
I said the same thing about Aerosmith. I like Come Together, their cover of the Beatles. I like what's that, Sweet Emotion. I mean, I like that song before it became like in umpteen movies and like all that. But I mean, back in the 70s it was a cool heavy song, but now it's like overplayed as fuck. But
sure.
How did we get on this with Bob? Oh, we were talking about 90s bands like Anthrax, how they were washing out because of grunge. Everybody blames grunge, but you got to think too, there was industrial. Sure. Everybody was trying to like maybe go with that because industrial kind of came out first, but it didn't break as big as grunge. But everybody was like, oh, let's do some industrial. At least the European bands were more akin to that. Mm-hmm. So Kreator had a record called Renewal, and also at this time, Millie, the singer of Kreator, had like surgery or something on his vocals, so he couldn't overdo it. So they did this industrial record where he did these flat vocals, and it was perfect for him healing his vocals, but he could do these vocals where it was like, like just kind of this flat yelling, And that wasn't really a great record. Like it was, and this is what we talked about before. There are bands like Morbid Angel too, who will experiment with a sound on their record where one or two songs are a little different. People now on the internet, because they can be heard, lose their shit and like talk shit to famous people, and they think they're cool. Sure. That's all it really is at the end of the day, what this is happening for.
Yeah. But I'm actually starting to see, because I listen to what's it called? Illud.
I was just saying, we talked about that record, Illudium Insanus, the Morbid Angel record, and it's a great Altars of Madness Part 2 with David returning to the band. It's good. There's one or two songs that have a little quirky, weird industrial twinge to them. It's almost like a Marilyn Manson sound. But it's Morbid Angel playing it, so it's okay. Why did they get their fucking balls nailed to a stool for that? They did, incessantly. Even Celtic Frost didn't get that much shit for Cold Lake. But this is, of course, the age of the internet, where people can say whatever they want, and they have a voice because everybody sees it.
Yeah. So, but you know what? Like, I think as you probably maybe you predicted or I did, you know, to me, like it's that latest Morbid album or Morbid 8, like, or what's that? How do you say the title? Illud, Divinum, what?
It's, hang on, I don't have it memorized. I really should at this point because I talk about it so much.
But what I'm trying to say
is metal page up here. It is Illud Divinum Insanus. Sorry, we keep saying Illud. Right. Illud Divinum Insanus.
Insanus. Okay, so I was listening to it a few days ago actually, and I think we're already starting to see the shift. Like people, you know, like I'll read the comments on the album, and when it first came out, dude, the internet comments were fucking relentless.
Oh, I know. I took up for the band, even though I don't personally know them. I was like, fuck all of you. Fuck off, man. And when we met David, I was like, dude, it's a good album. I like it.
But listen, people are starting to turn around on it. Like, most of the comments were positive now on that album. Like, if you start reading it, they're figuring it out. They're going, oh, wait, this is a great
It's not even that. You know what it is? It's the real fans are actually saying, oh, I like this record, without all the dumb fucks who were there before who aren't really dyed-in-the-wool Morbid Angels fans. You have like the Flash in the Pans people who are probably now listening to fucking mumble rap or something. They've moved on. Now they're talking shit to 69 on his Facebook page or whoever the fuck the big thing is, right? Or Kanye or whatever the fuck.
Oh no, there were a lot of like true fans that because they kind of got in on the crowd mentality. Like, okay, everybody else is hating this, I gotta hate it. But I think finally people are just like, wait a minute.
Well, yeah, that's what I was saying. Getting back to Celtic Frost is the Into the Pandemonium. I don't think Cold Lake will ever be like that, where people go back and go, oh, maybe. And I'd give it a chance. You know, I should own that record, but I don't, just to have it and just because. It's probably like a heavy record, like you said. But Into the Pandemonium, like most Celtic Frost fans, like, I think a lot of people do like it, but a lot of people did not at the time and had not. And some of them are coming around now, maybe going, oh, yeah, maybe this is kind of cool. And it's also acceptable now because things have changed. Like now symphonic music with females in it is acceptable with symphony strings and metal. Oh, yeah. It wasn't at that time, though. That's the thing. In the 80s, like I said, gays were tortured, women were like made fun of strongly in comic and TV and stand-up comedy and stuff. It was a different time. So that also has a lot to do with it. Like people's mentalities were different, like how they viewed anything across the spectrum, music, like gays, women, sex, like everything. And now it's viewed as everything's a little more, like you shouldn't think that, you shouldn't say that. Back then it was like, oh yeah, white men are awesome. Like look at the movies back then, like action movies. It was always Steven Seagal, Mel Gibson, or whoever the fuck would like beat the shit out of like 30 like Mexican guys, and then all of a sudden the girl at the end would throw herself into his arms and they'd fuck somewhere on a boat and he was the star of the evening. That's so fucking dumb. We love watching that shit now just for kicks but in the 80s, if you remember going to see those movies in the theater, which I do, it was serious shit. You're like, what the fuck? You were getting really into it and pissed off. You're like, oh my God, I can't believe they did that to his dog. Holy shit. And then he gets his revenge and like, yeah, America. And you're like, fuck. You look back now and think, Jesus Christ. And he had a mullet too, Mel Gibson anyway. And it was like, fucking dumb. And that's how music was. It was very pro-male, white, red meat. There weren't a lot of black people in music back then, in heavy music. That's why Suffocation was so unique when they came out, even though there had been a few here and there. Mm-hmm. But Suffocation were the first to just kind of come up and nobody batted an eyelash. They're like, oh, cool, Suffocation. If that had been the 80s, it probably would have been something different. What do you think about that?
It's funny. I was listening to an interview with Terrence Hobbs fairly recently, and it's kind of funny because he goes against the grain in a lot of ways. Obviously, being a black guy not only playing death metal, being one of the godfathers of death metal. Like people talk about the Suffolk band, oh, that's a Suffocation style riff. You know what I mean? Like he developed his own style of death metal.
Hey, you're breaking up a little bit.
He was talking to. Okay. So he was talking about, somebody asked him about like race, like if he had to deal with it. He's like, there was one time in his whole career, he's like, yeah, there was some idiot said something. He got taken care of really quick. But he was mentioning, like, he's like, fuck, he's like, I travel around the world. He's like, I don't see Nazis everywhere. He's like, I don't see it. Like, I haven't had any shit thrown my way. Like he said, he's like, there was one time, and that guy got shut down fucking quick. So like,
you'd have to be pretty stupid to be at a suffocation show and yell out something about black people.
Oh,
like, people there are going to be like,
yeah, dude, fucking get killed.
All racist, all those fuckers are dumb. I mean,
but I think the thing is like, a lot of times the racism, sexism, homophobia in metal, it's a little bit over exaggerated, I think, at best. It just doesn't happen on the scale that people want to, say it does.
So that's the thing, is we've talked about Burzum before, is like, he doesn't talk about that stuff in his lyrics, but he talks about it in the press. That's why I keep thinking he's doing it still to this day, just to keep his image up that he created way back then in the 90s.
Sure.
And at the time, he was trying to say he was a Satanist and a Nazi and a pagan, like in particular to the Norwegian heritage of Bolton and all of that. I'm like, well, you can't be all three, buddy. And I picked up on that early, but my friends were like, oh, yeah, you can. Like, no, you fucking can't. I'm watching something the other day that it was some thing on an old TV show from the 90s. They were talking about Satanists and how evil they are. They want to bring about flaming afterlife and all this, the flame world of flames and destruction. I'm like, that's not what Satanists do. That's B-movie bullshit. The actual Church of Satan, the only one there is, doesn't do that, and they don't even believe in the devil or God or anything like that. So thanks for trying. But
hey, it's speaking of that, like, is there an actual organization that is like a true satanic organization? Like we believe, like we believe in God and Jesus Christ and everything, and we just choose to worship, the one who lost the whole.
There have been numerous organizations like. There are ones like that, but most of them are doing it as an offset to the Church of Satan. Mm-hmm. So what they're really doing is seeing the Church of Satan not doing this. Mm-hmm. So they're saying, oh, we're against the Church of Satan because they don't believe we're the real Satanists. And how far does that go? It's some dumb fuck in his mom's house in the basement on the internet. That's it. So, when you see somebody torturing a cat, that's not the Church of Satan. That's some fucking lunatic who's watched too many fucking movies or something. But here's a funny thing. Talking of all of this, is the other day I was talking to one of the metal kids. There's a guy at work who likes metal stuff, but he's more of like that chugga breakdown, like moshcore, like slam death metal, like that kind of shit, or like the chugga like screamo, like he's always like, yeah, check this band out, you'll like this. I'm like, nah, I hate it. And he's like, dude, you hate everything. I'm like, you like everything I hate. Like, you don't like anything. I mean, he does like Morbid Angel and Cannibal Corpse, but he's into this other stuff where it's like the chugga beat down, break down, like moshcore big parts, and the singers like not death metal vocalists. Where they have the I can't do it, but the vocals I mean, where it's like
where it's like a yelp, like you can hear a yelp,
like those kind of things. And I hear that.
That's annoying to me too. It's kind of like that metalcore where they go,
To me, that is a guy who can't do death metal growls, and that's as low as he can go. He's trying to shout with as hard as he can with his lungs to cover for it. Like,
to me, that stuff sounds like somebody throwing a tent. Like death metal sounds like
exactly. That's exactly what it sounds like. It sounds like some teenage kid or early 20s kid who had a Monster Energy drink, and now he's trying to be too fucking angry about something that's not really happening in his life.
Mom took away the Xbox, and now I'm furious.
Yeah, and whereas my Monster Energy drink was flat.
Death metal doesn't sound angry as just so much as just like fucking badass. Like this is how an evil corpse would sound if it was singing to you. And that's what I like about death metal versus like metalcore or any of the core bands. Well, their death metal is literally trying to sound like something that doesn't exist in real life. You know what I mean? Oh fuck!
What the hell is that? Is it raining?
No, it's not raining. It just
like apocalyptic metal storms out there. Are you going to face the Slayer?
Mm-hmm.
You didn't catch that reference. Anyways,
anytime I hear like that, a sort of yelp behind an aggressive vocal, I'm like, oh, you just sound mad. You just sound like upset.
And yeah, it's dumb. Well, the reason why I bring that up is the guy who I'm talking about here. He's in the metal. He was a cool guy and everything, but he's always trying to get me to listen to this band, listen to that band. But we were talking about black metal the other day, and he was like, "Oh no, black metal's an exclusively like created white music." I'm like, "Dude, that's not true at all." And he's like, "Well, what do you mean?" I say, "Well, black metal, Norway, like put it on the map, and they're all white. But there are other bands who created it, like people from South America, people from, of course, from Finland as well, and there's a band called Blasphemy from Canada who are like arguably one of the first progenitors of black metal, and their guitarist is black." Yeah. And you mentioned Terrence Hobbs' Suffocation, like some guy made a racial comment and he got taken care of. Blasphemy are like all like 6 foot tall, like powerlifting skinheads, and if you didn't have the black guitarist in there, you'd be thinking they were totally Nazis, but they're not, because their guitarist happens to be black, and like he's a big dude too. And like somebody made a comment about him once. They actually went to the state the guy lives in, fucked him up, and went back home to Canada.
Yeah.
So,
and that's what I'm saying. Like the idea that you like racism
people, you don't fuck with that, man. Like real black metal is not about racism and hatred. It's not. You know, it never was.
Well, I mean, listen, like you play rock and roll, like any form of rock and roll, and that includes black metal. Anytime you fucking pull out a pentatonic scale, you're playing black music. You know, like let's not kid ourselves. I mean, it all traces back to that. But here's the thing, like I think there's because it's something I think about quite a bit. Like I'll listen to like music that I think is brilliant, and then I'll listen to like an interview with the person, and he sounds like an idiot. So I think there's almost like two types of intellects. There's regular like intellectualism, and then there's musical intellectualism, and they're not exclusive, right? You can be a complete dope. Like, okay, this is maybe an example you won't care for, but the band Enough's Enough, all right? They're one of my favorites. Yeah. And they write incredible songs, like brilliant, like well-written, clever songs. But the main songwriter, Donnie V, is a fucking idiot. Like, you listen to him talk, and the guy can barely string a sentence together, but he writes these brilliant Beatlesque kind of songs, and I'm like, there's like, he's a musical genius, but a regular dope, you know, like just kind of, and those things are not like a smart person can make awful music, but a fucking idiot can make some of the most brilliant music. It's interesting.
It's funny that you said that, because again, the same guy that I was talking about with the black metal, we were also talking. I just went on my Bergenspiel with him, and I said, "Well, what do you think, dude? I mean, is it wrong? I mean, where are we at in life?" And he's like, "Well, dude, most of the people who are doing the cancel culture thing and the woke thing aren't even into any scenes like that. They just grab onto whatever thing is going on at the moment, like whatever controversy, and they like get into it, and like they're going to tell you that you're bad." But he also said that he's guilty of liking music but made by assholes too. I'm like what? And he's like, "Oh, I like a band that's like, the band are racist. I'm not racist, but I like their music." I'm like, "Well, who?" And he's like, "Pantera." I'm like, "Pantera?" I'm like, "So all that shit with Phil was like true? Like he really like meant to say hi? I thought that was just him being a fuck around." He's like, no, he said some shit after.
He was fucking around, but he was also, he did say other stuff, but he was so.
What did he say?
He was in a bad spot. Like, I can't remember. Like,
this is like Kramer from Seinfeld, Michael Richards. There was like he was doing stand-up comedy, and he said something using the N-word, but it was, I think, meant in context, maybe, if I heard the story correctly. But he got completely canceled. Now he's fucked. But yeah, I'm hearing now that he didn't mean it that way. But of course, just using the N-word, you're fucked.
I think he meant it, but he was extremely upset. Like, he was being heckled, like, and you know, I think he just snapped, like, and went after the hecklers, and that's one of those things. Like, okay, if you're being heckled, And if you're like extremely upset at somebody, right, you want to say whatever is going to be the most hurtful towards them.
See, I get that, and that's human nature.
Black, so he went with the N word.
Yeah, but, that's human nature to do that. You know, it's like if I've noticed that if like someone does something, they happen to be black, that's the first thing that pops into your head. You got to fight that, though. That's what I mean. You got to quell that. You can't let it take you over.
I'm not justifying it, but I'm telling you the state of mind.
Yeah,
and maybe you can forgive that. You know what I mean? And same with Phil Anselmo, though. He was just so far. He was so intoxicated under whatever. Like he was an opiate addict. He was drinking. Like he was just out of his fucking mind. But like I said, dude, it's, you know, I think all he did was like do it. He like did a sick hell, and then he was drinking white wine, so he was saying white power.
Oh, see, that's out of context. That's what I'm saying. There was a wrestler in the WWE, like he did the same shit. He was drunk and he shaved his mustache and looked like Hitler, just fucking around drunk one night. And he gave a Sig Heil, and his now ex-wife turned him in and like got him fired from the WWE and sent the picture of that because someone took a picture of him.
Sure.
And he totally is, and his partner, he's a tag team wrestler, and his partner is black. And they're best friends for like their whole life, you know, and like this came out and it's like, well, what the fuck?
Right.
You know?
Right. And
that's bullshit. Like everybody does and says stupid shit. You can't be held accountable for the rest of your life for some dumb fucking thing you did while drunk when you were 19. I mean, fuck. Come on.
Do you remember like they tried to get Joe Rogan?
He's controversial anyway. I don't know much about him, but there was something like, what did he?
Well, listen, like. So what happened was, like, he's a comedian, right? And so somebody went through, like, just literally listened to, like, almost everything he ever said and found every instance where Joe Rogan said the N-word and made, like, this supercut of it and tried to get Rogan canceled. But what happened is, like, all of these, like, black MMA fighters and black comedians were like, nah, fuck this. Like, Joe's cool. Like, dude, he's our boy. You know, you can't, you know, and so many people came to his defense. It didn't do anything, you know, because people are like, no.
Now that brings up another point is, again, at work, I've got some, you see my restaurant, like I've got mostly kids from like the age of 16 to 23 working for me right now. There's hardly any adult. The metal guy I was telling you about, he's a little older. He's in his like mid 20s.
Kind of weird if you ask me.
Well, that's just your workforce today, man. That's all there is to it.
I know. But they won't hear it.
Like today, it's like you can't say shit about, and like with music, heavy metal, and like, you know, having like touching on all these like little things as it always has. Now it's a big fucking deal. It's like if you have a tank on your album cover like Marduk, then you're Nazis. Like they're not Nazis. They're just singing about World War II. Fuck people. Come on. It was like a brutal thing that happened fairly recently. It's like it's something to sing about in metal. We don't sing about flowers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this isn't like a guy with sandals and his acoustic guitar singing about his dog. This is like death metal. We're singing about fucking war and death. That's what we do.
Right.
Like, why is it now a big fucking deal? People are trying to cancel everything. And I think going back to the Morbid Angel record, there's a lot of people who aren't into it that are just jumping on the bandwagon online, on the internet to fucking do that, to have their voice heard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, I'm talking about like online and stuff like that, but I mean in person, yeah, of course they wouldn't do that. Most racists aren't courageous people.
Who gives a shit about online, honestly?
Did you ever hear about Napalm Death? They went over to Russia and played a show, and there was a band over there called Corrosive Metal that were like Nazi sympathetic, and I guess Barney like jumped off the stage and like beat the shit out of the singer from that band just like that. Like, wow, fucking A, Barney, man, yeah.
Well, I mean, fine, but I also don't think that's the answer. The whole punch.
Oh, it's not. I don't think so either. But I mean, that's just, you know, that's like standing up for your ethics, I guess. Just Napalm Death, but
yeah, I mean, you know, if they come at you, you go back twice as hard.
That's what I say about this whole thing. You know, I don't have a problem with like Nazis being kept in check, but at the same time, going out and beating the shit out of people just because you think they might be a Nazi, that's wrong too. That's
and that's the whole fucking problem is
you can't be held accountable when you were 15 telling a joke.
Oh yeah.
Now, do you think metal was like kept itself pure of that mostly, or it seems to me like it's kind of like getting infected here and there by both sides, you know?
Well, that's what I mean. I don't even think by necessarily both sides, but it's just like, and I don't care. Like my wish for metal and everything in general is just let any kind of opinion, let any thought be allowed to be expressed, no matter how horrific or transgressive it might be, because without being able to, like, without giving, like, say there is like a complete racist, right? If you shut down his ability to speak and ruminate on these racist thoughts, he's not going to have any kind of other counter argument. And a lot of times you change your mind on things just by speaking about it. Like, there might be a racist out there that just, hates blacks, hates Jews and everything. And as he's writing it out, all of a sudden he's like thinking about it and going, wait a minute. Why exactly do I hate? Where are my claims coming from? And a lot of times people will change their mind just by being allowed to speak their opinion. Because sometimes when your opinion comes out, like, you hold this opinion and it makes sense to you, but when you say it out loud, all of a sudden you're like, whoa, wait, that's fucked up. You're not going to be able to get rid of like bad ideas necessarily.
Well, you're not. I mean, look at it living in Salt Lake. You make fun of Mormons. Like, Mormons, we know why we don't like Mormons, because they also have their dirty little fingers into politics and their
I like Mormons.
Decisions. Well, you come from a Mormon family, but
mm-hmm.
They're really not terrible people when you come down to it. I mean, like,
I don't like the fact that they're in politics, but
that's what I'm saying. Is you have
for the same reason.
They're the fuckers, like the regular people on the street. They're okay, but I mean, it's the assholes who are.
But I don't think
profiteers. They're a fucking business, It's.
I don't like the idea of any nonprofit organization being involved in politics. I don't care if
me either. That's what I'm saying. But
if it's the LDS church, get the fuck out. Like, I don't even, dude. I'm an anarchist. I don't think we should even have a fucking state anymore. Like, we could do this on our own. The idea of like, the state of metal. I think that's. I think we've gone off the rails, but
oh yeah, totally. We started with Celtic Frost. Well, I mean, it all kind of relates to like people's perception of like the Cold Lake record and Into the Pandemonium, and like people's perceptions of like how things were different back then. I mean, it sort of relates.
Sure.
But
like, I want to talk about like bands that put out an album that is initially like hated, and then
isn't that what we just talked about?
Well, there's a few, because like one in particular I think about is the Cynic's Focus album, right?
That was hated?
It was misunderstood. Like, it wasn't well received when it first came out. And arguably they are one of the most influential bands on progressive and technical death metal out of anybody. But it took like 10 years after Focus came out before people were like, oh my God, I get it.
You know what? I'll bet that happened because they played in so many other bands before that record came out, like Death and Pestilence and everybody like that. And then that record was so different. That's probably what kind of hurt them.
Well, yeah, and they took what they were doing on Death Human, which was pretty out there already, and they started adding like female vocals, new age, and jazz into their music, and kind of this weird sort of vocoder voice effect. And it like at the time, there was nothing that sounded like it. In fact, I mean, if you can check out Focus, the album. Got to wrap it up. I gotta go.
What do you gotta do?
Meeting Angie for coffee.
Oh shit!
But
you're giving like our millions of listeners worldwide the short shrift because you want to meet Angie for coffee.
Yeah.
You heard it here, ladies and germs. Coffee with the married girl is more important. What are you up to, you conniving little prankster, you?
Nothing, dude. She's my pal.
Oh, man.
You know,
these
are the types of... Sounds good.
Until then, stay mentally unchallenged.